All right, everyone. Now we're moving into traumatic brain injury and head trauma. This is one of those topics where small assessment changes can mean major neurological deterioration, so nursing vigilance is absolutely critical. As we go through this lecture, focus on three major things. First, understanding the mechanism of injury. Second, recognizing early signs of increased intracranial pressure and neurological decline. And third, knowing the priority interventions that protect cerebral perfusion and prevent secondary brain injury. Remember, with head trauma, the initial injury has already happened. A huge part of nursing care is preventing the secondary damage that can occur afterward from hypoxia, hypotension, swelling, bleeding, or increased ICP. We'll walk through the different types of head injuries, assessment findings, emergency management, ICP concepts, and critical nursing interventions you need to recognize quickly in practice. One important distinction to understand is that head injury and traumatic brain injury are not always the same thing. A head injury is a broad term. It can involve trauma to the scalp, skull, face, or soft tissues without actual injury to the brain itself. A traumatic brain injury, or TBI, specifically means the brain has been injured by an external force. That injury can range from mild concussion all the way to severe neurological damage with long-term impairment. So clinically, when we talk about TBI, we're thinking beyond just the impact itself. We're thinking about altered lock, swelling, bleeding, increased ICP, cognitive dysfunction, and changes in neurological function. This distinction matters because not every patient with a head injury develops a brain injury, but every suspected TBI patient requires careful neurological monitoring. When we look at traumatic brain injury across the lifespan, the causes change depending on the age group. In very young children, especially under age 4, falls are the most common cause. In adolescents and young adults, we start seeing more high-impact injuries like motor vehicle crashes, sports injuries, assaults, and being struck by objects. Then in older adults, falls become the major driver again, and this is actually the highest overall risk group. One thing to remember with elderly patients is that even what seems like a minor fall can become a major intracranial bleed, especially if the patient is on anticoagulants or antiplatelet medications. And overall, males tend to be affected more frequently across nearly all age groups. One of the biggest takeaways with traumatic brain injury is that prevention truly matters. Simple interventions save lives. Things like seatbelts, child car seats, helmets, and proper sports protection dramatically reduce severe head injuries. We also focus on safe driving behaviors, avoiding impaired driving, and educating patients about fall prevention, especially in older adults. For pediatric and adolescent populations, safety education around sports, recreational activities, and water safety is huge. And then we also think broader from a public health perspective, including violence prevention, suicide prevention, and safe firearm storage. The reality is that many traumatic brain injuries are preventable, and education is one of the most important nursing interventions we have. One of the most important concepts in traumatic brain injury care is understanding the difference between primary injury and secondary injury. The primary injury happens at the exact moment of impact. That damage is immediate and includes things like contusions, lacerations, hematomas, concussions, and diffuse axonal injury. We cannot reverse that initial injury. What we can influence is the secondary injury cascade that develops afterward, over hours to days. That secondary injury includes cerebral edema, bleeding progression, seizures, hypoxia, hypotension, infection, vasospasm, and electrolyte imbalances. And this is where nursing care becomes critical. Preventing hypoxia, maintaining blood pressure, controlling ICP, monitoring neurostatus, preventing fever, and identifying deterioration early can significantly affect outcomes. So remember this key principle. In neurocritical care, a major goal is preventing secondary brain injury. The Monroe-Kelly doctrine is a foundational concept in neurocare. Think of the skull as a rigid, closed box containing three things: brain tissue, blood, and cerebrospinal fluid. Under normal conditions, those three components stay in balance. But if one component suddenly increases, like bleeding after trauma, something else has to decrease to compensate. The problem is that compensation only works for so long. Once the brain can no longer adapt, intracranial pressure starts rising rapidly. As ICP rises, cerebral perfusion drops, and that can lead to ischemia, infarction, and eventually brain herniation if not controlled. That's why early recognition of increased ICP is so important in traumatic brain injury patients. Scalp injuries may look dramatic because they often bleed heavily, even when the actual injury is relatively minor. That's because the scalp has a very rich blood supply and poor vessel constriction. You can see the different scalp layers here, and injuries can range from simple abrasions and contusions all the way to deep lacerations and subgaleal hematomas. One important thing to remember is that large scalp avulsions are considered surgical emergencies because of the risk for severe blood loss and tissue damage. And anytime there's a scalp laceration, proper irrigation is critical before closure to reduce the risk of trapping bacteria and causing infection. Also remember, a scalp injury does not automatically mean brain injury, but every patient still requires a careful neurological assessment. One major clue for a skull fracture is localized, persistent pain after trauma. Linear and comminuted fractures involve cracks or fragmented bone without inward displacement, and many are managed with observation and symptom control. Depressed fractures are more serious because bone fragments are pushed inward and can directly damage brain tissue. These often require surgical elevation and debridement. Basilar skull fractures occur at the base of the skull and are especially important because of the risk for CSF leakage and infection. So clinically, nurses need to closely monitor for neurologic deterioration, signs of CSF leaks, and evidence of increasing ICP or infection. Basilar skull fractures often present with very specific assessment findings that nurses must recognize early. CSF leakage from the ear is called otorrhea, and leakage from the nose is called rhinorrhea. Battle sign refers to bruising behind the ear over the mastoid area. Patients may also develop subconjunctival hemorrhage around the eyes or bleeding from the pharynx. One major safety point: never pack the nose or ears when CSF leakage is suspected. That can increase pressure and infection risk. Clear drainage after head trauma should always be treated seriously and reported immediately. The HALO test helps identify possible cerebrospinal fluid leakage after head trauma. When bloody drainage spreads on gauze with a yellowish outer ring around the blood, that suggests CSF is mixed with the drainage. This is a major red flag because CSF leakage means there may be a dural tear, which creates a serious risk for meningitis and infection. If suspected, report it immediately, avoid packing the nose or ears, and maintain strict infection precautions. Blast injuries are complex because patients are often injured by multiple mechanisms at the same time. Primary injuries come from the pressure wave itself. Secondary injuries are caused by shrapnel and debris. Tertiary injuries occur when the body is thrown against objects, and quaternary injuries include burns and crush injuries. So clinically, these patients require a very broad trauma assessment because serious injuries may not be immediately obvious during the initial exam. In older adults, falls are the leading cause of traumatic brain injury. This population is especially high risk because brain atrophy creates more space for bleeding, reflexes are slower, and many patients are taking anticoagulants. That combination greatly increases the risk for expanding hematomas. Another challenge is that baseline dementia or sensory deficits can mask early neurologic decline. So nurses need a very high index of suspicion after any fall, even if the patient initially appears stable. T-scan is the first-line imaging study in acute head trauma because it is fast and excellent for identifying acute bleeding and skull fractures. MRI is usually the secondary or follow-up study because it provides much better soft tissue detail and helps identify deeper or more subtle brain injuries. One major nursing concept to remember is that scans only capture a single moment in time. Intracranial injuries can evolve rapidly, so continuous neurochecks and ongoing assessment are critical, even after imaging is completed. Management depends heavily on whether the skull fracture is depressed or non-depressed. Non-depressed fractures are often managed with close clinical observation and careful discharge instructions if the patient remains stable. Depressed fractures are more serious because bone fragments can compress or injure brain tissue. These patients frequently require surgical intervention within 24 hours, with elevation of bone fragments and wound debridement. And regardless of fracture type, Always assess for associated scalp lacerations, dural tears, CSF leakage, and underlying brain injury. Traumatic brain injury starts with an external force, like a fall or motor vehicle crash. That primary injury then triggers the secondary injury cascade inside the rigid skull, where increasing pressure becomes the major threat. Clinically, nurses monitor for the signals of deterioration, such as worsening headache, localized pain, battle sign, CSF leakage, and neurologic decline. Imaging with CT or MRI then helps guide management decisions, ranging from close neurologic observation to urgent surgical intervention. The major takeaway is this: TBI is common, serious, and often preventable. Early recognition and aggressive pressure management are critical to survival. For NCLEX, remember that the priority in head injury care is preventing secondary brain injury. Maintain airway, oxygenation, and cerebral perfusion. Frequent neurochecks are critical because deterioration can happen rapidly even after a normal initial scan. Watch closely for increased ICP, worsening headache, decreased LOC, vomiting, unequal pupils, or new neurologic deficits. Suspect basilar skull fracture with CSF leakage, battle sign, or subconjunctival hemorrhage. Never pack the nose or ears if CSF leakage is suspected. CT scan is the first-line imaging study for acute bleeding and fractures. For nursing care, maintain cervical spine precautions until cleared. Elevate the head of bed about 30 degrees. Avoid activities that increase ICP, and monitor for seizures, hypoxia, and expanding hematomas. And finally, prevention matters. Seatbelts, helmets, fall prevention, and substance-free driving significantly reduce traumatic brain injuries.